Welcome to First Responder Financial Freedom Podcast. We talk to first responders all over the nation who are investing and working on businesses outside their first responder jobs. Our goal is to motivate and educate each other and help provide a better financial understanding for a better future. Now here are your hosts, Mike Webb, Tyler Thrush, and Aaron Foster.
All right, you degenerate cops and firefighters and first responders. We're back, the three of us today. We're just calling to put some content out there with things we've been talking about, we were looking at and doing in our personal lives. So Tyler is using his 12-year-old bladder in the bathroom right now. I'm probably next after that. And then Mike's got a MRSA face with a man-grown beard going on. So, Mike, let's start talking. Let's start talking the 80% figured out rule. Like that's something that you mentioned before we hopped on. So tell me about that.
It's kind of just a different way to say analysis paralysis. And, I've had to work with this myself because I always want to figure every step A through Z out instead of just worrying about steps A, B, C, and D and figure the rest out once you get there. So, I'd heard somebody recently talking about, just figure out what it is you're trying to do. Say, in this case, you're going to build a deck. I don't know. You're going to want to get it figured out, get your dimensions, get your material list or their permits or where the footers, all the little, that stuff. But you're not necessarily going to worry about where each screw is going to go before you start, Real, you get what I'm saying. But like,
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah, but people get so worried, and myself included, that you have to know every little detail about something before you get started. And it's just like, that's almost like 100% chance that you're not going to get started if you try and wait till you have every single thing figured out before you pull the trigger on something. There he is. Pregnant chick on a road trip.
Dude, it's 75 hard. I got to pee every 5 minutes, I feel like.
I thought are you just on like 365 hard? Because I feel like that you're always doing that.
So what happens when you're retired and you have nothing meaningful to do every day? You need to get a checklist, and that's part of my checklist is going from 75 hard to phase 1 to phase 2, 75 hard, phase 1 to phase 2. Yes, okay. That is public. I'm officially retired as of May 1st.
Congratulations.
Well,
I think.
Yeah, man. It's kind of like congratulations.
Yeah,
like you got that like face. Obviously, well, we didn't plan on talking about that, but that's obviously something the three of us have known was in the process. So like you basically suffered, for those that are not familiar, right? You had a medical issue and had to have 3 surgeries, basically could never return to full duty. So you've been dealing with that for quite some time.
So you try to cut it off and invert it once and they didn't cut it off properly. And then you want to go into what happened, Tyler?
Yeah, it's fine. I hurt my knee on duty in 2021, and I had 2 surgeries so far. I'm probably going to have a third one in the next year or so. And basically, I'm not able to have full functionality on my left knee. Currently, I have about like 10 to 20 degrees of bend on my left knee, so I walk like a pirate. And it's been an interesting process. So you go in for something that's really like routine. It's just I tore my ACL, my patellar tendon, my meniscus, my patella was all jacked up, everything, right? So they go to repair it, didn't work. Second time, it got worse. And then now now that I'm retired, it's just kind of I'm looking for specialists that are going to be able to give me some degree of certainty. So far, nobody's really given me any type of certainty. It's like, well, it could work, it couldn't work. And at this point in my journey, it's like I don't want to have a third surgery just that they think it's going to work. I want to know that the person's doing it is confident and that it actually is going to have some type of beneficial results.
But your injury is relatively routine for the fire department. Like we're back.
100%. Yeah. It's nothing like cool. It's not like I got my leg chopped off or anything. It's like it was a standard knee injury.
So was it doctor error? Was that the kind of the crux that made it worse?
I'm going to hold off on that. But yeah, I mean, I would just think this. I would say like it's a routine surgery. That's definitely not been routine. I have over 10 centimeters of atrophy in my left quad. So on the rating scale, that's above anything 5 centimeters or above is considered severe. So yeah, I don't. I'm not going to comment on that part, but
it didn't go right.
It didn't go well. Yeah.
I'm gonna send you a handicap sticker for your birthday coming up.
My wife wants me to get that thing so bad, and I absolutely refuse to do it.
Just get out with the cane and be like, start pointing at people.
Well, we were somewhere yesterday, and she had to get out, and it was just funny. Yeah. What were you going to say, Mike?
I was just going to say, so, I mean, you did, what, 10 years with LA County?
Yeah, 14 years total.
14 years, okay. So
yeah.
14 years, and I know that this could probably be an entire episode on its own, but can you just kind of share as much as you're willing, like how did that financially look? Like, pretend you didn't have your real estate or mortgage business. How did that look from like the department's support or lack thereof? I'm not 100% certain, because I think a lot of people think, hey, I get hurt on duty, they're going to take care of me. And I mean, I'm sure we've all been in the fire service long enough to see where that has not necessarily played out. So, kind of might just be a good talking point for people that are like, they never think it's going to happen to them. I don't think it's ever going to happen to me. Just like you probably didn't think a ACL injury was going to end your career.
No.
Right. So it's like nobody ever thinks it's going to happen to them. But I think the older we get, the less Supermanish we feel. And we realize, you know what? I could step out of the wagon, hit a curb wrong, and just completely fold like a ton of bricks. So what did that look like? They put you on modified duty. Did you get paid? Did you have health insurance? How did that look?
So the first year you get something, I think it's federal. It's called 4850 time, which is it's industrial leave. So you get paid for that first year. And then after that, it expired. So I got paid my full wages for the first year, health insurance, stuff like that. And then in the second year, the state picked up part of it, a portion of it. And then after that portion is where I didn't get paid at all. And I was required to pay for my own health insurance, which is obviously expensive. I mean, we have good health insurance, and I had to cover that bill, which, I mean, it was pretty hefty. So to answer your question, like the first year, I knew I was grateful to have a side business because I was still getting paid. I was all that kind of stuff. Or not even a side business, just my rental properties alone, right? And then so the second year when I was not getting paid, my rental properties pretty much floated a lot of the expenses that were going out. So it was kind of a wash. And then after that point, they picked up another injury, so I got covered again. It was just a lot of back and forth. And like, to answer your question, I think I realized really quickly, had I not been like saving money, had I not had rentals, if this was somebody that was just working their overtime shifts, normal shifts, their 10 shifts a month plus overtime, you can get into some serious trouble pretty quickly. And I was super grateful for it, and I still am, because it gave me an avenue. And like, I knew like worst case scenario, I had some properties that I also owned free and clear. I could sell those and like re-up my reserves. I had options, but it was because the years prior to that, I mean, I was working my butt off outside of work to like get rentals, do things like that. Never anticipated this, but that part, I mean, I couldn't have been like more blessed to have that option. So, it kind of brings home what we've always been talking about, is that you kind of need, you need to have a backup plan just for retirement alone, let alone something like that happened to me. What I also found out was there's a lot of guys, I haven't talked to any girls, but I'm sure there's girls too on the job that have had this happen to, where they started to reach out to me because they had like, something similar to my case, where an innocuous injury that like, I had one guy who has permanent nerve damage in the same leg that I do, and his leg is unable to function normally. So he also will never return to full duty. I have people that had neck injuries, back injuries, all these things. And, some of them had to move out of state in order to be able to afford living based off of what they're going to receive, no longer, living off of overtime. So it was a huge eye opener. I mean, I'm grateful that I had, savings. I'm grateful that I had rental properties, things like that, in order to float me. Otherwise it could have got really bad.
I know we talked about this at length before, but if you didn't have those things in place, what kind of quality of life do you think you'd had, or what kind of obstacles would you have faced?
Probably, I don't know. I mean, it depends. If I didn't have any of it and I was without pay, I'd probably be forced to sell my house here, probably go back to renting, use the equity to live off of it. I wouldn't have had health insurance if I didn't have money. It would have been super stressful. I mean, it's already stressful enough, especially dealing with the fact that, I'm 44 years old. I didn't really know if I was going to ever be able to return back to work, if I wasn't going to. I mean, that changes. I'm sure you guys know, like with your spouses, right? We're used to seeing each other 50% of the year. And it's different. And you guys are laughing. You know exactly what I'm going to say.
Because they can't handle the other 50.
Well, you come home and it changes everything, right? Because you're now home every single day. And there's so many positives with that. I got to see my kids every day. I got to see my wife every day. I got to be more present in their day-to-day lives.
Sleep in your own bed every day.
Yeah, you get continuous sleep, all these things. And then it's also like so adjusting. Weird. Yeah, it's adjusting to like, oh, what is this new?
What's this normal feeling? Oh, it's rested. Yeah. Oh, okay.
So it's interesting. And the more I talk to people, the more I realize I'm not the only one. And then once it was finalized, I'm still going through that part right now. It's like I have my like my personal items and stuff in my garage that my buddy Ram dropped off for me because I didn't really want to go to the station, to be honest with you. I didn't want to like go finalize that, so I never did. But the really trippy thing is the day that I was actually retired was the day that my station burned down. So
I can hear the phone call now, Mr.
I know.
Yeah, I'm sure no.
I know. I have Ring cameras.
Yeah, it was fun. So before I got hired by the fire department, before I got hired by the fire department, I did my internship with the ATF doing arson investigation, and that's when the DC arsonist was hitting all of Maryland and DC and burning everything up, right? So the guys at the firehouse were like, hey, we don't want to ask you this, but I'm like, man, fuck y'all. Like, that's not me. Ended up being, I think it was like the manager of a KFC is what it ended up being. A buddy of mine ended up writing a book about it, but it was just the timing was kind of like, come on, man, really?
It couldn't have been worse timing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, man, it's one of those, like, this has just got to be bittersweet, where it's like that you've been dealing with this for 3 years now. And at least now you have, I guess, for lack of a better way to describe it, it's closure. Like it's at least now it's not just constant doctor's appointment, board hearing, so whenever I understand this is going to be different depending on where you work in the state and department and whatnot. But so you're medically retired. So how does that affect your pay, like your pension? Like, do you get that right away? Do you have to wait? And then this has been an issue where some of the guys I know that have been medically retired, if they start to make more than a certain dollar amount, they basically start to reduce your retirement income. So I was just curious what that kind of looks like. Is it 50% or no percent, 100%?
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, it'll be on Transparent California here anyways, so everybody can see our salary. So
that's any
so
public.
Yeah, 50%. I get 50% of my pay, and then I'm responsible for 50% of my medical, and then the department picks up the other 50% of the medical. I know Aaron kind of mentioned what you're referring to, Mike. We don't really have that as far as like if I start to make income, it would reduce my income. So that's good too. It's just interesting because I mean, I'm grateful for what I did get, but I'm 44. I got a wife, 2 kids. I live in Southern California, which is extremely expensive. So even the thought of like, no longer, hey, I'm doing this to like set myself up. It's like, I'm doing this to support my family day to day is something that I have not had to think about personally for 14 years, right? Like we know with our jobs, it's secure unless something crazy happens, especially with all 3 of our seniority numbers now, you're pretty insulated. So very unlikely that you're going to lose that certainty. That was a trip. And I was talking to a lot of people about that. It's like, I did not remember that feeling. I'm like, why am I getting anxious? And I'm like, oh, I have to like put food on the table, for lack of a better way to describe it.
So let me interject something, because if you want to answer this or not. So I'm gonna tell you something about me. Is when I got hurt and I faced retirement, I kind of got into a funk. I'm like, I'm not active anymore. My endorphins aren't going. Like I'm getting fat and lazy. And it's like, what do I do? Like, how do I get out of this funk? And I know it's an issue for a lot of guys, because I talked to a lot of guys about this. Like at what point were you like, maybe I need to start looking at something else. Maybe I need to find another hobby. Maybe, where are you mentally right now for that?
So I didn't really address any of that like the first 2 years because I was not in denial, but I just was like, I'm gonna make it back. And then afterwards, like the last year or so, that's been like a huge roller coaster. So it's a trip. You sit around all day. It's really, I don't know how to describe it. So I hope I'm answering your question, Marin, but you sit around all day, you don't have a lot else to think about. And that starts running through your mind. Like, I'm going to be retired. All your friends are at work. You see all these things being posted. And I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to do? And then what I've done traditionally is mortgages and real estate. Well, it couldn't be any worse for mortgages right now. Right. So it's like, am I going to go beat my head against the wall like that? And to be honest, and I think this is what you're asking, is like mental state, not great. Good days and bad. Right. But yeah, I don't think that we're meant to not be working. I mean, that's just my thing. I think
personalities.
So yeah, and I think that's honestly, like I said, I really you guys were asking about 75 hard. I'm not joking when I say that. Like, I started to think I don't work out anymore because I really can't. I used to love running, cardio, CrossFit, anything. I like challenging myself physically, and it's always been a game to me. Like, how hard can I push? And now I cannot do that anymore. And that was a huge change for me. I realized that my outlet for this whole time was because I don't go out, I don't drink or anything. So it's like, what am I going to do? Oh, I'm going to go run. I'm going to work out. I can't do that anymore. So I did 75 hard. Even that was a mental thing, because I'm like, well, I'm not really doing crazy cardio. I'm not working out that hard because I only have one leg that's functional. I can't bend my knees. But I'm like, you know what? I'm doing it as the best of my ability. And it gives me structure. It gives me things I have to check off and I have to do every single day. So I talked about this with guys. And guys have honestly asked me if I thought that I needed to go to talk to somebody. And I think it's probably on the horizon. I think it's probably necessary. And it's a lot to process, right? I mean, even though I love doing real estate, there's a lot about the fire department that I knew I loved, but I didn't know how much I was going to miss it until that last year. And I realized, okay, I'm never going back to the station. I'm never.
And part of your identity too, right? You identified as a firefighter.
Yeah.
That was your jam.
Yeah. So, and I'll be honest too. So I didn't think I did as much as I did. And that was a big piece of humble pie for me, because it was way more tied into my identity than I would have thought. So maybe everybody feels that way, and I don't think so. Looking out, I wasn't like Rookie Rescue where I had like a leather radio strap driving home, but I realized how much
lie to me.
But if there's free food, I'll wear the t-shirt. No, I'm joking. No, but so Aaron, yeah, I did. It was crazy how little I realized how big of a part like that was of my day-to-day life. And I honestly, like, it was kind of not embarrassing. I didn't realize it until I was like, holy crap, like this is going to be a lot harder to give up than I thought.
Have you thought about going to volunteer?
Well, no, I mean, I can't because
in a admin capacity to still be in that atmosphere.
So what I want to do is I do want to do that. And what I want to do is be a liaison for my department and for any other department for people who are going through similar situations that I'm going through, and they need to figure out how to work, right? Because I'm lucky. I have skills that I've acquired. You guys, same thing. You have things that you could do the day you got that letter, right? And that's why we're doing this podcast. Like, this could not be more true. This is exactly why we're doing this podcast every single week. But there's a lot of guys who don't, and they're great firemen, and they're extremely skilled at their job, but they've been doing it since they were 18. Maybe they don't have other skills to fall back on. And if you have a physical injury, most of the time it's going to be some type of manual labor, trades, things like that you can't do because of your injury. So I want to be able to help people out in that capacity.
My wife asked me the other day, since I retire in 4.5 years, I'll have 30 years in the fire department, and 25 in DC. She's like, do you have any interest in volunteering? And I was like, absolutely. Like, the pancake dinners, the invitations alone are going to be worth it to me. But honestly, I don't know. Like, is there a benefit there? Is there a cost benefit? Is it still ingrained to be around, the guys? And I'm like, joking or not, like the volunteer versus career thing, it all depends on where you are and who you're surrounded with. Like, the area that I live in now, most of the volunteers are young, like college age kids. And it's like, I go there and like, I'm a fireman. And I'm like, you're not a fireman. Like you've been into like an Excelsior pallet started fire. So it depends on the atmosphere that you're going to be in. So that's why I was curious if you're going to do the volunteer thing and to what capacity. And I'm sure you're not going to be riding fire trucks. I was thinking more like the admin and like coaching and stuff like that.
Yeah, any way I can, I will. And
Do they have volunteers there?
There's like reserves, there's paid call, stuff like that. And I'm sure I could do it. And it's like, I'm sure I could figure something out. I mean, when I was in the process of being retired, I was like, well, hey, I have a lot of skills that could translate to the admin side of this job. I've run businesses before, all these things, but that just was not in the cards the way that played out. And that's like a whole different story. But yeah, I do want to stay tied to it. And like, I know people calling me has been therapeutic for them because they had questions that they did not know the answer to. And it definitely helps me. Like, that's what we want to do. We want to help the guys out always. And I would see their phone calls and I would ignore them sometimes. But now that I picked them up, I realize, hey, it's probably going to help me more than it helps them, whatever questions they're asking me. So I just know there's a gap, right? Like I don't want to compare it to a business because that's not how I look at this, but businesses, you look for gaps to fill, and then that's where you go start your business. Or if there's something, this is like, do I think this is being addressed properly in my department or other departments? No, I do not. Because it is such a low frequency, but instead of high risk, right? We always say low frequency, high risk. I would say low frequency, and this changes your life dramatically.
Real question. Are you going to keep your nerd card? I mean, your paramedic card?
I'll say it, and then if I need to, yeah, I'll change it. I do have it activated. So that was an interesting part too, right? Because you're responsible for yourself, and all of my certs were about to expire. So yeah, I personally decided to go through all the CE, pay and re-up all of my certs in case, and this did not happen, but in case my department ever were to come say, hey, you're not certified as an EMT or a medic before you retired. So you're technically, that's so weird. Somebody from the station is calling me, and he's calling me because it's about mental health. Yeah, I would say I kept all my certs just for that reason. I didn't want to like get down to retirement and say, hey, you're not an active EMT or paramedic, which is required for our department. And you're like, I didn't want it to mess with what was happening.
So how long do you need to answer that?
No, I know who it is. He's helping me though. He's going to call me and
I just is this like the 911 call? You know, like we don't want to fucking send this to voicemail, guys.
No, and I'll be honest.
All right, good.
He's somebody who he is doing what some of the guys want me to do. I'll put it that way. Yeah, he's going to put me in contact with somebody that the guys think I should be in contact with.
I've been trying to talk you into like the next thing. Like I was having him look up lasers for laser engraving and woodwork. And I mentioned on here CPR business because he's got his paramedic and he gets to carry the former LA County fireman. Like, do you have anything in mind? Are you toying around with anything or what?
Well, I think I'll just ramp up mortgages again, but like outside of that, I have always thought this, I need to find something outside of that industry, I think. And because there's so much uncertainty with real estate, I think real estate mortgage is an inefficient market. I think with AI technology increasing, I think spreads, things like that will get dramatically decreased over time because it will not be as inefficient as it currently is. So yeah, I thought lasers, we've actually been joking about starting an apparel business because we spend so much money on softball shirts and stuff like that, and they're not operating well, and it's not a very solid business. We thought about doing that, like silk, whatever it's called, screen printing, silk screen, whatever. We've thought about doing that.
A lot of times you can find, like in this area, I think in the major cities, I've noticed that you have a lot more opportunity to buy like used businesses on like Facebook Marketplace. So like I've been looking at I always look at stuff, whether it be like, hat printing, screen printing, presses,
you look at the most random shit ever.
I do. But I'm also the mindset, like what's next? Like this is like a lot of things aren't keeping my interest. Like I enjoy woodwork, but like once it becomes a business, it's kind of like
sometimes new opportunities are just distractions, wearing something sexy, but I'm guilty of it too.
I get it. I mean, there's always we all suffer from the shiny object syndrome. Like, oh, what's that? Oh, what's this? So like sometimes I'm curious, like, I was going to make hats for the guys at the firehouse. And I was like, oh, well, I wonder how much a hat press costs. So I go on Facebook Marketplace. I'm like, well, it's cheaper for me to just buy the hat press and do it myself. Maybe I'll just do this as a side hustle. And then like, it goes down that rabbit hole and that rabbit hole and that rabbit hole. I'm like, focus, Aaron, focus. Take some Adderall or something. Jesus.
It's hard. Yeah. You always are chasing the next thing, right? Because everything loses its luster after a while. Like flipping is super fun until you've done it enough. Wholesaling is super fun. I'm sure Mike's store. So perfect example. You're talking about storage. I'm sure storage was extremely exciting the first year and a half. And you're right, around 2 years, right? I thought you were at 2 years. Maybe it's only been a year.
Yeah, no, it's been longer than it's about 2 years or so.
So now it's like that. I'm guessing that whole draw and that appeal, it could still be there, but it's nowhere near that first couple months when you're learning something new.
Yeah, that's with anything, the first time you do a flip and you're like, you get it from A to Z and it's like, wow, this is amazing. Now I'm like, yeah, I could care less. Like it's just a box, like let's just get this thing rolling. So no, I hear you. But everything kind of loses its luster. It's why you kind of have to keep, I don't want to say reinventing it, but digging into it, learning, pivoting, whatever you want to call it. But so
boring stuff makes money though.
Yeah, 100%.
So
real quick too.
Go ahead.
Before we end this, I want to say one thing. Remember that it's the guys, and I've learned this, and I think if guys are listening, we always say, at least in our department, the department is the crews. It's the boots on the ground. And that's where my fire department never once failed me. So I want to thank all those guys too. And they continue not to. Like I said, I just got a call right now. And don't underestimate how that important that is to receive, how good it feels to receive those phone calls, stay in touch, and be sure to be the guy who is reaching out to people as well. That's one part of this entire process that lived up to everything I thought it would be. And I felt confident in that, even to the day that they asked me to bid out so they could get somebody in, which they didn't have to call me, but they did. It never once let me down. And that's partially because of the battalion I'm in. It's old school, it's traditional, and it's just the guys there. That's something that it's been refreshing, and I've never once been let down by any of them. So
one of my retired battalion chiefs, his saying was, I always miss the clowns, but I don't miss the circus.
100%. That's why they send me the MDC pictures of things that I don't want to go on. So they're like, bro, do you really want to go on this person who's walking around with crap all over their legs and we got to go chase them down
through Tent City?
Yeah, I've got a lot of MDC pictures lately.
Oh, God.
Oh, God.
So do you guys want to pivot from here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I feel like that was on the fly, but there's definitely, I think, probably an entire episode in just, hey, everything you need to know about unexpected retirement, because there's a lot of probably little nuances that we could touch on there that maybe you're not prepared to talk about today. But if nothing else, man, like that's a pretty good reminder right here, guys. Like this is in essence why this group exists. So,
now where we go from here?
Take some sort of action to get started, because if you found it, I just think of all the people I know that if they were faced with that situation and how bad it sucked for you, how much more screwed they would be than you are. Like, dude, I don't want to diminish your experience. I'm not saying that, but just think about, you can probably think of at least, I don't know, 6 handfuls of guys that if we're faced with that same predicament, they would be screwed, because how many guys are working every minute of overtime to support their lifestyle? And I get it. There's a season for all of that. But like, if that is your plan, if your plan B is overtime, you are way effed.
It's eventually a big one. Yeah. And I got lucky that the 2 biggest years in mortgages since I've probably been alive were the 2 years leading up to that. So there's a lot of things I'm like, wow, this kind of couldn't work out better. But yeah, you're right. Had that not been the case, it would have been different. And it's I would think, if nothing else, do a basic budget and balance sheet of what is my monthly outgoing versus what happens if I cannot work an overtime shift. And I know everybody says that, but you don't want to do it when you're in a situation like I am and realize there's nothing you can do at that point.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, they say it's, I forget, it's like too late to build the boat once it starts raining or something, or whatever the hell the saying is. You get the idea.
Yeah.
Trying to pack the parachute after you jump out of the plane. I don't know.
Exactly.
Make up your own.
That sounds good.
Exactly.
All right, let's go for
you got something better? Eat shit. I don't know.
Yeah, let's do it. What are we going to talk about?
Let's talk about what kind of war stories you guys got going on for the fire, if not for the fire department, for your weeks. Obviously every week we run into some kind of issue. Like, what are you guys having going on?
Oh God. Well, it's only Tuesday. So, I mean, man, I got a plumbing issue at a rental. Of course, rentals are just like the bane of my existence recently. And these are like places that I've rehabbed, like and not like shitty rehabs. It's just stuff happens, like dumb stuff. Like, don't let your tenants put those little things over the shower heads that like hold the shampoo and stuff, because eventually they'll slide off, hit the spigot and cause some sort of leak, damage, turn it on, overflow, ask me how I know. And it's like stuff like that, it's just like, that's why I put in the sidebar conversation, like that's just rolling with the punches, man. Like it's always something. Some weeks it's little like this. 2 weeks ago, I was excavating all the way around the house, putting waterproofing up. So sometimes it's really big. Sometimes it's not so big. But either way, man, it's like my rental portfolio has absolutely taken heavies the last like 3 months, to where like my cash flow on them is going to be next to nothing for the year on some of them. Yeah.
One of the when I started renovating years ago, I was wanting to make every single renovation 2 years renter proof, as much as you can get, so like anything that has a knob or a switch, like make sure it's something that they can't break off somehow. Everything that has like I know guys that take off dishwashers, that take off blinds, anything that can break, like take it off. So even now, like I just spent $817 to have a snake run on one of my properties, and I was like, $800 and some odd dollars to snake this out. Like, what was the blockage? Like, we didn't see anything. Well, it's clear now. I was like, okay, well, what caused the blockage? Because that determines if I'm going to pay for it, or if the renter's putting like little kids' toys down there, or paper, or.
I had a renter that used to try and flush diapers. Couldn't figure out why the toilet kept overflowing. Hey, you dumbass! You shouldn't even have a kid if you're that stupid. Like who? At what point in time? Idea.
It's definitely why they're not a homeowner.
Yes. How about you, Tyler? Any headaches this past week?
No, just kind of like, so with all this, it's kind of nice. I'm like more focused. So we are putting a flip on the market this week, hopefully. Sure. We have to finish wrapping up 2 of the rentals. I think we have a renter for one of them. The other one should rent very quickly when that one's done. But like you guys just said, the one that's not rented yet, plumbing issues, insurance covered like $5,000 of it. We had to pay more out of pocket. So no, it's just getting stabilized and then kind of getting ready. Our SEO, I switched ads, went to SEO because I didn't want to keep spending money until all this was done, and I knew like what my plan was. But SEO is actually starting to pay off, where we're getting about 10 to 12 leads a month. And that's not a lot compared to what I used to pay for a ton of PPC and stuff like that. But it's all incoming, and I think we can close 1 out of 12 for sure. So if I can do 12 flips a year and only be focusing on SEO, I think that's a huge positive. So yeah, not too many fires, but like you guys, rentals were bad last year. It was like 1 moved out, 1 had a flooding. The one that moved out, it's like all these weed abatement stuff. There was roosters on the property. They had all kinds of junk. So it's kind of settling in. And I personally think in July, rates are going to drop. And I think that's going to help all of our businesses, because I don't think it's going to be big. I think the Fed's going to say a quarter point, but I think that's going to signal that the end of rate hikes is definitely here, and I think that's going to help the market. But yeah, I don't really have too much to complain about this week, to be honest, which, as you guys know, a lot of the time it's just stupid things. And I hate dishwashers too, Aaron. That's becoming one of my things. I'm like, I'm going to quit replacing them, because every single time I buy one, it's like a year later they're done, because it's not theirs. They're just going to put whatever the heck they want into it. It backs up.
They never clean the plates off. Like it's not a mulcher. Like, like this is not for shredding trees. Like,
no,
clean the plate off before you put it in there. But
garbage disposal is not a water pump either.
Yeah. So yeah, ceiling fans, garbage disposals, and dishwashers.
Pulling blinds, pulling cords from fans.
Yep. Oh yeah, my son I just replaced the 3rd ceiling fan. in my house since
I got to do that today.
Yeah.
You know those not the toggle switches that you flip up and down, but they're like more shallow, so it's like a tilt back and forth.
Yeah.
Like I found in rental properties that people would just take their hammer and bang them to turn the light on and off. I'm like, why are you punching the light? What the light do to you?
Yeah. The whole casing around the actual switch, you can see that thin plastic casing is usually broken, and you can tell it's because they're hitting, because the plate's fine. It's just that interior portion is always cracked.
Yeah. If I were to be able to build a rental property, it would look much like a jail cell. You just have a floor drain, all concrete.
Dude,
Well, look at the dorms at universities, just like, block walls and
bulletproof. That's how ours was.
Maybe they're onto something.
yeah. I'm like, Jesus, it's not much more better than a jail cell is.
Don't do carpet. That's one thing. I keep telling myself that. I keep doing it to save money, and I'm officially done with carpet and rentals. It's like, why do I keep doing this?
Yeah. Yeah. Carpet in your house will last 15 years. In a rental property, 3.
Yeah.
It's like,
dude, brutal.
I don't know what they do to it.
I'm gonna tell my quick carjack story. I want to move on to rates real quick. So I have one property with 3 houses. Somebody got carjacked in DC for a very nice Mercedes. The car has been hot for about a year. They decided to drive into the stream on the property in front of 2 houses. So I got the call a couple of days ago that they drove over my mailbox, and I've got a car sitting in my stream. So like that's my fire this week. And I found, like, I think it's funny. That's not a story you can tell every day. Like, oh yeah, I got carjacked a year ago and the car was hot, and he ran behind the houses and couldn't figure out how to get back across the stream or back across the bridge. So I think, like, in the hindsight, like, it's all a headache. Like, it's all like little headaches. But at the end of the day, like, okay, we're building generational wealth having these things and being paid down. So I think it's a headache, but it's a smaller fire than some of the other stuff we deal with.
Yeah.
Say in the fire department.
Just choose your hard. It's like,
yeah.
What they say, like, I've seen like one of those memes. It's like, I've been broke and it's hard, and I've been rich and it's not nearly as hard. It's just a different kind of hard or something like that. Like,
it's kind of like building a boat before it rains.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
you still have problems, but now you have the money
Different
to take
ones.
care of those problems. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was Sam Parr. He's like, yeah, I've been broke, and trust me, it sucks. It has a lot of problems. But he said, I can tell you, once you make a little bit of money and one of your problems isn't worrying about paying the bills, it's a lot nicer.
Yeah.
Like, that's a valid point, man.
Tyler, what so we talk about rates and points and stuff like that, and I mean, it's not supposed to be tied in together, the Fed, the rates, and who's getting voted in. I think they are. I think there's a lot of backdoor stuff going on. Well, I'll put my tinfoil hat aside right now. What have you heard for rate changes over the next year, 2 years? Like, what's the murmurs?
Well, originally, I think the consensus was for 2024, 3 rate cuts by the Fed. That's obviously not happened. They haven't done any yet. Now the consensus is 1. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay. Now the consensus is 1. And then next year, I want to say there's up to 4 that have been forecasted. So I think what they're afraid of is they're afraid of saying, hey, we have inflation under control. They do that quarter rate cut, and then something pops up, and then they're in big trouble. I also agree with you, Aaron. It's supposed to be outside of government, right? So they're not influenced. But I do agree with it, and it's interesting because depending on which side of the fence you fall on, like, I didn't remember because I was too young, but Reagan pressured the Fed pretty good too, and I'm a Reagan fan. And then now, from what I listened to something yesterday where Elizabeth Warren is going heavy into, drop rates. And I could say this, outside, who cares what party you're in, if rates go lower and consumer sentiment is improved because of that, whatever party's in office is going to look better, right? I mean, rates, we lowered rates. We made it easier for you to afford these things. And I think that was interesting. I also heard something cool too, which I haven't researched, so take this for what it's worth. Up until the last month or two, I don't know how they track it. I forget. They've been tracking savings for the average for the U.S. as a whole. And whatever they're looking at has indicated that we are at or near the end of all the savings that was accumulated over the COVID years. So they're now seeing more people enter the job market and then debt starting to increase, which I thought was interesting and is obviously something to follow. But yeah, so I think one cut this year, if we're lucky. I think there's a good chance that we're not going to get it, but if we do, it'll be in July. And if we don't, then next year. But I think when it happens, it's going to create the same thing that we had during COVID. You have a bunch of pent up demand. You have people who don't want to move. And regardless of what happens, construction cannot catch up fast enough. So that's what I've been seeing. I've been paying attention to it a lot. And I think it's going to be good moving forward. Maybe not this year, but next year for sure.
So let me put my tinfoil hat on. So the U.S. does not have affordable workers right now. How do I say this? For years, every time there's something happens, like, World War II is Japanese, then the influx of the Irish and the influx of the Hispanics, the influx from Africa, like we usually have cheap labor at some point, depending on what's going on in the world. We are a nation that depends on cheap labor to continue building and pushing forward. We haven't really had that for the last couple of years. All the labor has gone significantly higher in every state across the country. We've let a lot of people in, and this isn't like anti one race or another. Like people from Pakistan, from China, from Saudi Arabia, from Mexico, Guatemala, Venezuela are all coming in the southern border for the most part. So there are strategies out there. There's tinfoil hat. People are coming into the country, so now we have cheap labor again to keep pushing and growing and growing and growing. Because they said that we're a dying community. We don't have enough people to keep producing the amount of infrastructure that we used to, especially with our infrastructure aging. So I see a lot of changes demographically, politically in the future of our country. I think it's very dangerous. There's also a strategy called the Cloward Piven strategy, where you influx a ton of people into the community, base them all on welfare, make them depend on the government, and then the government is now going to go broke. So how do they fix that? They raise taxes and they control the people. So it's kind of a control method. So is that going on right now? I don't know. Tinfoil hat. I think Sean Ryan talked about this on his podcast. I think Joe Rogan talked about this on his podcast. There's just insight from a lot of whispers in the DC area. You rub elbows with certain people. It's kind of like, oh yeah, they're definitely trying to do this, this, and this. Some people are like, well, no, they're not. There's always going to be some kind of disagreement, but at the end of the day, you got to figure out like how expensive is it to build a house? Can we build a house affordably? Is there a demand for housing? Yeah, there is across the board. So it's, for me, when I look at housing in this DC market, for a new build in DC, it's $1,000 a square foot, give or take. Outside of DC, you're at the $300 to $400 a square foot. So if you're going to build 1,000 square foot house, which is a smaller house, at $300 a square foot or $400 a square foot, you're at $300,000 to $400,000 before your impact fees, your taxes, and whatever else that you might have. So I think, this is my personal opinion, I think that there's never going to be, not never, there's probably not going to be lower cheap labor again, but I think that people are trying to push for that. It's hard to build. I mean, even I think Derek Sherrill, that ADU guy who's been on the podcast before, he's a big guy who does ADUs. I think his build cost is around $180 to $200 a square foot. So 1,000 square feet, you're still at $200,000 plus land, plus impact fees and taxes and whatnot. So all this being said, like I agree with what you're saying, Tyler. We have a housing crisis. As the rates get lower, the value of the house goes up because of supply and demand, and people don't want to live in slower, lower economies like, the boondocks of West Virginia or the boondocks of Idaho. They want to be towards the city center where there's something that they can get a hold of. If you're farther than an hour away from Walmart, like that's not a high demand area. It's a dying community. So I don't know. I think if rates drop, the demand goes back up because building affordable housing is unrealistic. That was a long walk for a drink of water.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it is very true. I mean, I definitely see that there is definitely a contingent of people that want to be in the more remote areas and commute in. That's one of the things I see where I do a lot of our stuff is people work like on a hybrid model. So they make a DC salary, but then they can go take the train into DC twice a week and work remotely the other 3. So, but you definitely see it changing some of the landscape here, where they expect some of the conveniences and services that you might be accustomed to in a metro area like that. But anyways, we need a mobile home park is what we need, because.
So to that point, so I was been talking to a couple of different friends about developments, and a lot of modular homes, also known as double wides or single wides, a lot of them are being built now with drywall. So the expectation for a mobile home is like, most people think like, 1970s bad color, siding's failing, metal's all bent to hell. But like a lot of these modular homes are high-end homes now. So you take a modular home, instead of putting it on a trailer, you put it on an actual foundation. There's not much of a difference between stick built and these now. And I've been looking at doing it in different states, depending what the impact fees are and the taxes and whatnot, and for my parents and my wife's parents. But I think that there is a possibility that we're going to see a growth in that part of the economy.
Right. Yeah. And people are going to find the inefficiencies right now with housing. And I think that's like, California is trying to adopt an ADU strategy. I think, tiny homes will become more popular. I think they'll turn duplexes into condos. There's going to be all kinds of things that they're going to do in order to try to change it. But I do think there's like, tinfoil hat. To your point, Aaron, with the, what is it called? The Cloward-Piven strategy. You turn us into a renter nation. You dramatically decrease the wealth of the middle class. You don't have that stability and things like that, and it changes. I mean, I think like one of the single biggest things about the U.S. is the ability to own property as a private citizen and have your own home. I think it's something that has been not taken for granted, but it's been going on for so long. It's just like, that's the American dream, and it's been achievable. And I think, to your point, people are questioning now whether or not that's still achievable. And with all the red tape in California, for example, dude, you're not building homes fast enough to keep up with demand in California.
Another thing is like, if you say you do build enough houses, right? Like even if you build houses fast enough, like what's the quality of the houses? Like I'm nitpicky, right? So like I've seen a lot of houses built very, very fast, and like, are the joists all level? Are they actually all like, do I hear a lot of creaking? Is the trim done correctly? Is the plumbing done correctly? Like, is the soffit done? Is the roof actually insulated the way it is? Is the roof, prepared properly? Like, I see a lot of deficiencies in new builds, and I think D.R. Horton's one of the biggest names in the country. Like, they get a lot of flack because they're taking anybody who work on a house and putting up a house as fast as possible. The builders are going to have to benefit somehow, and it's usually by the income from the sale of the property. So, say they're building at $180 a square foot and they're selling at $300 a square foot. So they make $100, $120 a square foot per house. Like, yeah, there's money to be made, but like, there's a lot of obstacles there. I don't know, man. I think that we're at an impasse right now. Rates come down, demand goes up, housing values go up, or build a house. Like, I'm of the mindset, like, if we can go back to the order a house off the Sears catalog, build it yourself, or sub some of the work out with less impact fees, which for impact fee for us is like, you got to pay for school systems and public water, public utilities. You got to pay for the use of roads and sidewalks and stuff like that. So, and here around me, it's the impact fee is $40,000. So you buy a lot for $100,000, you pay an impact fee of $40,000 before I even break ground. And at $400 a square foot, if I build a 1,000 square foot house, I'm into this thing for $530,000. What can I sell it for? You can't. It's cheaper just to buy a house. And Mike, he does the same thing, and a lot of our friends do the same thing. Really, is buy a house where it's cheaper to buy and fix up than it is to build new. Especially with your storage unit facilities, buy under market value, fix it up, something somebody can't get a loan for because it's so beat up, and then on to the next one.
Yeah, it's basically, can I buy it at or below replacement cost?
Yep.
So like, if I know what you just said, $300 a square foot, if I can buy a product less than $300 a square foot, I am automatically hedging my risk against rate changes, demand, like just a lot of stuff. If I own the asset for less than what it costs to build it.
Tyler, how did you acquire the ones that you're working on now? Was it all SEO?
Yeah, this one was SEO. and it was somebody calling for the person who owned it. She was getting older, needed to go to a care facility. But yeah, it was SEO and page specific situation specific pages.
Nice.
So the how that turnaround is like, I'll buy it for X amount of dollars, and they're like, absolutely cool, no problem. Did you inspect it first? Did you send your contractor out there?
So yeah, so I get the lead. I talk to them. I send my guy out there. He looks at it, lets me know what he thinks. We comped it out. We offered based off of the comps. Then I always get an appraisal afterwards, so I can offer that to my private money lenders. It ended up appraising for more than what we thought it was worth, which is good. But again, we haven't sold it yet, so it's somewhere in the middle most likely. But yeah, to that point, it was like I got timid the last 2 years in Boise because it was so crazy. But at the price that we can offer it, just as a wholesale, or a full flip, it's like you can't buy a new home cheaper than that. So we're going to fill a spot in the market to where it's a first-time home buyer. It's cheaper than anything else they can get. It's in Boise, which Boise as that, as the center of the Treasure Valley, I don't see it really changing that much. I don't see it going down. It's still more affordable than the things being offered out there. I think it's going to be a good deal. And they got we didn't even have to haggle on the price. We said, this is what we're going to pay. That was a fair price to them. Boom, boom. Everybody was happy and it was done. And those are fun. Does that always happen? Absolutely not. But it was just kind of nice. Like we knew what we would have to do to fix it up and then make a profit on it. They were okay with that. They needed to get out of it quickly and everybody won.
So the last house I bought was a probate house. The lady actually died in the house. It was on the market. It was on MLS. I just happened to be in this area. They had only had it on the market for, I think, 2 days. So no, it was like 2.5 days. But so it was a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It said final and best by Sunday. Friday it snowed. People didn't come out Friday and Saturday, so they had a couple offers. And I just did an escalation clause up to the maximum that I would offer at it. And I didn't expect to get it. This is part of the 1031 exchange, but they gave me $10,000 back for closing. They gave me money for repairs, I think it was. I could be wrong about that. I can't remember. But like I just got the home bot, house value thing, and it's like $60,000 more than I paid for it right now already, without the upgrades that they don't know about. So
did you say home bot?
Yeah, what is it? Is it home bot? Home buy? What is it?
Yeah. Well, a home bot is like something that like I give to all my mortgage clients. That's why I was curious. I've never heard anybody say, yeah, it's like all neon colors, neon and gray.
Home bot app. So my realtors usually send it to me for the updates of all the properties that I've either bought or sold or whatever. You have a projection one too. So I know there's a couple out there for like, oh, if you buy this for now in 10 years, it'll be worth this. Like, do you have a projection bot, whatever the hell it is?
No, I just use HomeBot for that. And for me, it's more of like a CRM and to be client facing and be in front of them. I look at I like Property Radar for California. They do a lot of stuff like that. And there is some type of forecasting in there, but nothing too crazy.
Average house value goes up. I would say in our area, 2 to 3%. I don't know about Tyler, Mike. Do you guys have any idea?
7% this year for California so far. So
7?
Yeah, 7%.
I don't know, but I'm getting my house appraised this week, so it'll be interesting to see what he comes up with.
So I think during COVID, it was like 10% for housing in high demand markets was like 10% per year. 7 is still high for this year. I don't know what it is here, but on average, it was like 2 or 3%. So if you calculate it out for the years, this is what I do with our COLAs, our cost of living allowances, our raises. I do the same thing. 2 to 3% at retirement. You project what your income is going to be for the foreseeable future. Do the same thing with houses.
Let me see. Yeah, 7.2%. So this guy that I know, he brought up a good point. People that are waiting for rates to go down, average sales or median sales price where I live, I think is almost $1 million. So it's like 891, but I'm not in the mood to do any math. Oh, I can do it. Whatever. 7% of that.
Big bank, Hank.
$63,000 in a year, right? $63,000, and they're waiting to save $100 a month on their mortgage payment. That's the kind of logic that.
Dude, the fallacy of I'm going to wait till rates come down. People do not, and myself included, at times have to be reminded of this. When the rates go down, the buyer pool goes up. Therefore, the price goes up. So it's like, trust me, when you're accustomed to 3, 4, 5% interest, and now all of a sudden it's 7, 8, 9, that sucks. But I mean, just think about what it was 3 years ago when rates were 3%, 4%, 50,000 over asking, no inspections, no closing costs, blah, 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 blah. Now, you can at least negotiate a little bit.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm not an economist, but waiting for rates to go down, I think it's just a fallacy.
The last house I bought, I was just talking about. I think I had paid like $600 or $1,000 for closing because they gave me money back towards closing. Like that was a negotiation point of the sale. So like if you can't get the price down, try to get them to pay for your closing costs or pay for repairs or whatever it might be. There's different negotiation kind of went out the window during COVID times, but now negotiation's back. But I have one mortgage that's like 6.875, another one's like 7.125. And when rates come down to say 5%, like my profit per month from the renter, and when I refinance, should go up, $500-$600 in these properties. So like just refinancing these two properties, I should get a net profit every month more of $1,000. So think about it that way. Like buy in now when it's high, make just a little bit of money, and then whenever it comes back down, it's never going to be 1981 again, where it's 12, 13% the highest. It's even 7-8% that makes it harder for the government to operate because real estate is such a financial mover and a moneymaker.
Absolutely. Well, we're almost at an hour. You guys want to keep going?
Yeah. Well, I got to go pick up the oldest. It's summer. They got camp this, and we got to go from camp to baseball. It's like perfect. It's only 100.
All right. Well, guys, it's been great. I think we should do this again in a week or so if we can get a body. I got a couple people in my pocket I'm trying to get on. I don't know if you have anybody else lined up, but I got one former firefighter EMT turned doctor, and she just started her own business doing anesthesiology. She said she'd hop on, which she'd be a cool one.
There you go. Let's do it.
I've been trying to get a former firefighter that owns a restaurant and a storage business on here. I'm going to have to try that a little bit more. But
so if you guys have made it this far, are we looking for bodies?
Yeah. Tell you what, just get the next crackhead they drag in on the AMBO. Let's just throw him on, see what he's got. Probably got some wisdom.
Hey, Rook, come here.
So, all right, guys.
All right, man. Congratulations, Tyler.
Thank you.
Talk to you
soon.
See ya.